think everything's working. Should be. Don't see any problems with it. Audio seems fine. Although I can't actually hear it because I couldn't actually handle having two audios. Right, last week we did Rogue. We're making our way through. It's slowing down my, it's making my countdown to figuring out what I do after this is done shorter and shorter every week. But this time we're doing Sorcerer, which I kind of have a soft spot for. I don't think it's that good as a class in general. Um, but I like the logic behind it. I've got a friend who particularly doesn't like it, but I don't mind the idea of he goes on the fact he's not a big fan of like people being chosen for stuff, right? Like, oh, it's in your bloodline, you've always been good at this, and I understand that logic, but I sort of see Sorcerer more as like, your ancestors happen to have made a deal with X or deal with Y, and you're sort of like, because of your generation having this blood in you, whether via getting blessed by it or by possibly experimentation or even just having, a species that would have this inherent magic being part of your part of your like family tree, you get this access to power, and your journey isn't like the wizard in the sense of the wizard's trying to learn from books to figure out stuff. You've technically got all the power that you. I can again. This is just an interpretation of how I do it, but you kind of have all the power already. It's just you on a journey on how to harness it. Um, by having no reference, because it's all based on instinct, and it's like being born with like like an extra hand or something that you have no idea how to control, and so you've just got to learn through effectively trial and error how to use said power. And I quite like the idea behind it. I think the meta magics and the spell lists and stuff, I think it comes across as being like kind of like a worst wizard in just strict power scaling, because you get access to less spells because they're more thematically around whatever subclass you've chosen, but they're supposed to be countered by the fact that you have access to meta magics that allow you to do specific things, like twin spells, which is the most powerful one, where it's like a single target spell. You decide to actually spend some of these meta magic points, these sorcery points, and you're able to cast it on two people. Or like making it silent, or doubling the range or something. I just found in general that you don't use these as often, or at least I haven't seen them used as often. Admittedly, the only sorcerer I've seen at the moment has been me. I could be wrong, and well, actually, there was a brief stint that one of my friends played a Clockwork Soul, but I don't remember too much of it because I think it was only a couple sessions. Um, but I haven't had a lot of experience with it, so I could be completely wrong, but I kind of just see it as like, I think on average I'd pick Sorcerer more than Wizard because it gives me more like backstory stuff to do, more questions to sort of ask of like, how did you get the power, or like, what's the story behind this whole thing? Um, but I think in general the Wizard comes across as more powerful. Anyway, let's just get into it. Um, First one is Aberrant Mind, which I think is one of the newer ones. Yeah, it came from Tasha's. And this one's all about psionic stuff. I saw an interesting one that effectively went with, and as you can see it there, actually, it's number 4, which is effectively the Baldur's Gate um, starting cutscene. where it's like you've got a tadpole in your mind, but it's not actually completing you and turning you into a mind flayer, but you've got psionic powers, which I thought was really interesting. Anyway, you get access to a set of spells. I think you'll see this in a lot of the newer sorcerer ones, and I'm glad that they added it. Arms of Hadar's pretty decent. Dissonant Whispers is pretty decent. Mind Sliver can be incredible. Um, it's a lot of these are intelligence saves, a lot of psionic stuff, so it's quite unique. You don't see them as much. Calm Emotions can be useful. I've had very very few uses of it in my personal experience, but I think it has some uses. Detect Thoughts is always useful, as like a interrogation tool, or just to generally see what the opinion of you someone has. The Black Tentacles is a decent ability. I've always been a big fan of anything that does AoE, and this one does AoE. It's kind of like a static constant AoE, which is pretty decent. I've always been a big fan of them, and it also makes them go restrained. I like all summons. Summons are always decent, especially if you're a sorcerer, just to have something that's blocking the enemy. Uh, Telepathic Bond is one of those ones that I think if you play it strictly and you don't have it where like you can sort of talk out a game about your strategies, this one becomes really useful because it allows you to do all of that sneaky strategy talk that I know we do, and I think a lot of other people do, sort of like out of character anyway. So yeah, that can be useful in a specific kind of campaign. And telekinesis, it's okay. I'm sure it'll have some out of combat maybe applications. You also get telepathic speech. As a bonus action, choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of you. You and chosen creature can speak telepathically with each other, while the two of you are within a number of miles of each other, equal to your charisma modifier, which will be quite high because charisma is the stat you use for spellcasting. So it should be either 1 or 2. Probably 1, as in like the number 1 stat. Um, the telepathic communication lasts a number of minutes equal to your sorcery level. It ends early if you're incapacitated or die, or if you use it again. Okay, it's not a bad ability. Again, it's limited a bit by the fact that, as I said before about the telepathic bond one, where it's like a lot of at least what we personally do in our campaign, and I feel like a lot of people also do, where you don't really care about out of combat strategy talking. Um, Means that I don't think this would be as useful. There is some uses out of combat if you're in a situation where it feels like it a lot more that when you're in situations where you're in like a noble's house or in like out of combat situations, it feels, at least in my experience, a bit weirder to have all of these out of combat um well, out of game talks about in-game stuff. So I could see it being useful in that aspect. Also, to maybe get NPCs that aren't particularly, can't deal with the out-of-game stuff because they're not there, obviously. Um, to get a plan over to them as well, it could be quite useful. I think in general, the spells are the big thing here. And I think you get a decent combination of utility damage and sort of protection spells. Amsa for example, is pretty cool, but it's a pretty close range one, right? Which you normally don't want to be getting close range. Um, Whereas like Dissonant Whispers, decent range spell. Same with Mind Sliver. You've got some utility in calm emotions, detect thoughts, and the telepathic bond as well. Also telekinesis. The black tentacles is like a decent AoE, and the summon's pretty decent as well. What do you get later? So at 6th level, you get Psionic Sorcery. When you cast any spell of 1st level or higher, so it's effectively going, if you're casting something that isn't a cantrip, which makes sense, you can cast it by expending a spell slot as normal, or by spending a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level. If you cast a spell using sorcery points, it requires no verbal or somatic components, and it requires no material components unless they are consumed by the spell. I think that's pretty powerful, because it's one of those scaling abilities, right? Early on, you can use your sorcery points, which you get about... Okay, yeah, it sort of scales with level. It just scales with level. So at like 5th level, you can spend all of your... You could spend like, a cut 3 of them to get a 3rd level back. Effectively, or not use one, right? I think that's really useful because later on, when you're getting 20th level, and I know I shouldn't be talking about 20th level stuff because the average person doesn't get that far, but if you think, what I'm trying to say is that with the scaling, at 20th level, you're casting 2, 3 9th level spells. That's huge. You're a full caster as a sorcerer. So you're getting access to these 9th level spells, and now you can cast 3 of them if you use all your sorcery points, because you use 2 on... Because you have 20 in general, and you use 2 instances of 9 sorcery points to cast 2 9th level spells. And then you just go, okay, well... now I cast my actual 9th level spell that I have. The added bits of it not requiring verbal, somatic, or material unless you consume it is also very useful because it means you can now use it out of combat and as a really sneaky ability. Or maybe in combat as a sneaky ability. The fact that effectively you can do this by while just talking with somebody. Just casually, without it looking like you've done anything. Assuming that the spell doesn't have any visual effects to it. Like, obviously, if you're casting Fireball, they're going to see that a Fireball just came from your general direction and hit somebody. Even then, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, they'd still be like... They still could maybe think that you were getting attacked if they haven't seen it literally forming right next to you. So yeah, I quite like this ability. I think it's quite powerful. I think it's quite good. Psychic defense, you gain resistance to psychic damage and you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. Psychic damage won't come up too much, but if I'm sort of thinking at it, if you have a psychic based backstory, there is a good chance that the story beats related to you will have stuff related to psychic damage. But yeah, psychic damage is not a common type. So I don't know how often that actually comes up, but it makes sense thematically. And then having the advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, it's useful. I mean, what I'll say about this ability is it's not the only ability you get at this level, which is a huge help for it, and it does better than what you'd expect from earlier subclasses where you could just see your advantage on saving throws against charmed or frightened just being the... that would be it for the ability. And having this extra little resistance to a pretty niche damage type is... It's not like a bad addition. I think in general, 6th level ability, Psionic Sorcery is very, very useful, and Psychic Defense is just there as a little added bonus. When it comes up, you'll be happy it's there, but you won't notice it half the time, in my opinion. Revelation in Flesh. You can unleash the aberrant truth hidden within yourself. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 or more sorcery points to magically transform your body for 10 minutes. For each sorcery point you spend, you gain one of the following benefits of your choice. So I read that as if you spend 4, you can get all of them. The effect will last until the transformation ends. You can see any invisible creatures within 60 feet of you, provided it isn't behind total cover. Your eyes also turn black or become writhing sensory tendrils. What's interesting about that ability is it's not blind sense, it's just invisibility sense. And I feel like for the vast majority of things, they are the same thing. There's other stuff like blur and stuff, I guess. If you have an alternate sight, it doesn't matter. But that's an interesting little thing they put in there. You gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hover. As you fly, your skin glistens with mucus or shines with otherworldly light. Flying speed's always useful. It's rare to get one on an actual character, and it's even rarer for it to not have a restriction. But it is quite late, so it's not too weird. You gain a swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed. You can breathe underwater. Moreover, gills grow from your neck or a fan out behind your ears. Your fingers become webbed, or you grow writhing cilia that extend through your clothes. Okay, swimming speed and double swimming speed, I guess it makes sense because you're not going to be using it as much as flying speed, because flying speed, flying speed you can use in most places where there's land, right? There's always going to be a sky, but the sea you very rarely do adventures in the sea, so it'll come up less likely. I think it's fine. It's good to have the ability to just go, I can add a swimming speed whenever I want. So I don't mind that as an ability. Or, your body along with any equipment you are wearing or carrying becomes slimy and pliable. Pliable? I think that's just pliable. You can move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing. You can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraint or being grappled. That's not too bad. There is occasional enemies that I've dealt with in games that have been around grappling. They've had a part of their ability be to grapple you. And the idea that you can just decide to get rid of that grapple is quite useful. And the non-magical restraining one, I guess if you're caught in rope or something, I don't believe that if you're 14th level, there's going to be enemies that are able to capture you and decide to capture you just in non-magical rope, or like in a jail that's non-magical in any capacity. Overall, these abilities, all of them are interesting utility abilities that are quite niche, except for maybe the flying one. But when they're brought up, when you get to use them, I think you'll find them quite interesting. I don't mind it because it gives a lot more than I actually expect from an 14th level ability. A lot more utility. But it's not wowing me, if I'm being honest. I think I've got to go into the mindset that there's not going to be as many interesting damaging abilities because inherently you have your damaging abilities from being a full caster. And I think I need to get that into my head, and then when you start thinking like that, I think this ability isn't as bad as I think in my head. Finally, 18th level ability, Warping Implosion. You can unleash your Aberrant power as a space warming anomaly. As an action, you can teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 120 feet of you. Immediately after you disappear, each creature within 30 feet of the space you left must make a strength saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, a creature takes 3d10 force damage and is pulled straight towards the space you left, ending in an unoccupied space as close to your former space as possible. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pulled. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, or unless you spend 5 sorcery points to use it again. So what happens is you teleport wherever you want to go, but in addition to that teleport, anybody who's within 30 feet of where you teleported from must make a strength save or take 3d10 and be effectively clumped together. Which is quite interesting. There isn't much follow-up you can do, Because in my head I was like, cool, I could group them all together and then I could hit them with an AoE or hit them with like a concentration spell that limits their movement, like that tentacle spell. And they're in the tentacles, they'll be taking damage and they have difficult terrain and, you know, might get restrained and stuff. But I guess you could set it up so that your friends, maybe one of your other full casters, can then put down like a spike growth or like a entangle or like any form of AoE, just like a fireball or something. I think this is pretty cool. I like the fact that if you wanted to, you can just get it back again, and it costs sorcery points, but you'll have it's only a quarter of your sorcery points effectively at this point, and you're regaining. You start regaining 4 every short rest if you get to 20. So yeah, I quite like this ability. Overall, Aberrant Mind, I think complaints I'm gonna have about the older subclasses, I don't have with this one because it has all the things that I want. It gives you a different cool spell list, which thematically makes sense. It gives you some interesting utility abilities that, although they don't incredibly excite me, they are gonna get some use back from them, and they are the kinds of abilities you probably want on your sorcerer because your damage is coming from your spells. So you don't need as much damage as, say, like a martial class would need. The psionic sorcery ability is really cool because it sort of changes how you play the game. But like this one very much sort of gets you in the mindset of, yeah, psionics it's magic, but it's different. It's the same way that key's technically magic, but it's different, and I like that. Overall, pretty cool class. Clockwork Soul. So as I said before, this is the one that one of my friends briefly played. I didn't get too much of an idea of how it plays, so I'm still going into this um a bit new. Clockwork magic. Yep. Whenever you gain a sorcery level, you can gain one spell. You can replace one spell you gain from this feature with another spell of the same level. New spell must be abjuration or transmutation from the sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell list. This kind of is like in addition to getting a spell list that you already get. You can also sort of start taking from the wizard and occasionally the warlock. You might want to take a couple from the warlock. There's a couple of warlock exclusives, but they have to be abjuration and transmutation. That's cool. I like that. In terms of the spells, you just get base. Protection from evil and good is very, very useful. So is alarm. Aid, I didn't realize how good it was until I saw it recently, and I think it's pretty decent. Um, Lesser restoration, it will come up. Maybe not in combat. I could see it being used out of combat, but even in combat, like if you're in a situation where one of your friends is, say, paralyzed, I think the scariest one there is by far paralyzed. Being able to just go, okay, well, there's nothing I can do on my turn that isn't as good as what you would be able to do if you had your turn. So I'm going to use my turn to make it so that you get your turn. Very useful. Dispel magic will come up whether in or out of combat. I've seen more use out of combat than in combat, but it can be used for both. Protection from energy, is that the one where you choose a type? This is a bit niche, but I guess if you're going into a place where you know there's going to be this kind of damage, putting it on your fighter, your paladin, it won't be bad. Freedom of movement's not bad. I just don't see it getting a lot of uses, I'll be honest. Summon Construct, as I said with the other summon, having something that can be there to block an enemy getting close to you. If maybe your friends are dealing with something else at the moment, is pretty good. Greater Restoration will get a lot of use, in my opinion. because not only does it do all this stuff, Charmed, Petrified, Petrified more specifically when it comes up will be, huge. Petrified is a scary condition. The curses, that'll come up a lot, in my opinion. You're in a situation where you have a cursed weapon and you're like, oh, what do we do? Somebody has greater restoration, they've solved it. Reductions to target ability scores don't come up a lot, but if you're dealing with occasional ghosts that do it, at the end of the day, you don't want to be using a 5th level spell to get rid of one of the reductions. But if it means that your friend can live, you'll do it. And the same with the hit point maximum ones. Because with the ability ones, if you get to 0, you're dead. Also, Wall of Force, very useful as a crowd control thing. But you also get Restore Balance. Your connection to the plane of absolute order allows you to equalize chaotic moments. Whenever a creature you can see within 60 feet of you is about to roll a d20 with advantage or disadvantage, you can use your reaction to prevent the roll from being affected by advantage or disadvantage. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. What I really like about this ability is just how it kind of fucks over rogues. If you were fighting an enemy rogue, it's like, oh cool, I got advantage on you, so I get my sneak attack. Nope. No, you don't have advantage. But no, in seriousness, I think this ability is, I think it's better than the telepathic link one, because I think this one will have uses a lot of the time. The idea that it's like, even out of combat, right? If a creature's like, if you're dealing with a noble and the noble's like, oh, I'm so good and I've got the verbal high ground in the sense that I have all the leverage, so I'm gonna roll with advantage to convince the crowd that I'm right, and you go, nah, you're doing it normally. Just that quick change is huge. I mean, the math change. You're probably taking off the roll. You're probably taking 2 to 4 off the roll, which is pretty big. Bastion of Law. You can tap into the grand equation of existence to imbue the creature with a shimmering shield of order. As an action, you can spend 1 to 5 sorcery points to create a magical ward around yourself, or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you. The ward lasts until you finish a long rest, or until you use this feature again. The ward is represented by a number of d8s equal to the number of sorcery points you spent to create it. When the warded creature takes damage, it can expend a number of those dice, roll them, and reduce the damage taken by the total number rolled on those dice. That's pretty cool. It's like that feature that a lot of people have where it's, as a reaction, I roll a die and I take that off of the damage you're going to take. Except this is a constant one you can put on someone that you can just walk away after you put it on, and it's there for a really, really long time. And you can use multiples on it. Like if it's like, I'm going to die if this hits me. This goes, okay, well, roll all 5 of them then. Roll 5d8 and you take no damage. I think it's a really cool ability. That you'll see a lot of use. It will feel like you're doing something because of that ability. Trance of Order. You gain the ability to align your consciousness to the endless calculations of Mechanus. As a bonus action, you can enter this state for 1 minute. For the duration, attack rolls against you can't benefit from advantage, and whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can treat a roll of 9 or lower on the d20 as a 10. Once you use this bonus action, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you spend 5 sorcery points to use it again. I like this ability. What's interesting is it has the similar wording as the capstone ability of the Aberrant Mind, which is interesting. I mean, they're both Tasha's one, so it makes sense to have that whole sorcery point thing, but it's interesting that this is not on the capstone ability, and it's instead just on a 14th level ability. Overall, I like this ability because it's like, it's thematic in the sense it's order, but they don't go the way that I think a couple times I've seen done, which is they go, well, okay, but this also means, like, I could see a situation here where it's like, sure, they don't get advantage against you, but you don't get advantage against them in any way. And sure, whenever you roll an ability check or an attack roll, anything lower than a 9 is a 10, but it's the same against you. Like, normally they make it two ways, but this time they've decided to just make it one-sided. Because it's... I kind of like this idea that it's like, yeah, you're not a being of order, you have control over order. So you can kind of do it, you can kind of take liberties with stuff, right? It's also a decently powerful ability for that level. Clockwork Cavalcade. You summon spirits of order to expunge disorder around you. As an action, you summon the spirits in a 30-foot cube originating from you. The spirits look like Modrons or other constructs of your choice. The spirits are intangible and invulnerable, and they create the following effects within the cube before vanishing. The spirits restore up to 100 hit points, divided as you choose among any number of creatures of your choice. 100 hit points is not insignificant. That's the kind of numbers that, even distributed 3 ways, can make someone survive another couple of hits, even at that level. Any damaged objects entirely in the cube are repaired instantly. I could see some narrative behind that, where it's like, oh no, this ancient divine weapon is broken. It's like, I use this ability, I repair it. Every spell of 6th or lower ends on creatures and objects of your choice in the cube. Interesting. I don't know how much this will come up because, and this is the only reason I'm bringing this up, is that I don't think a lot of the time, and I could be wrong here, debilitating effects on you from like creatures will be spells specifically, unless you're dealing with a lich or another form of spellcaster. I think that in general you'll be dealing with situations where they're spell-like effects. Like, oh no, you're covered in acid spewed by this, I don't know, this blimmin' acid salamander. This green salamander. Your AC is reduced by 2 until, you do a long rest or something. Like, stuff like that where you're like, it's a spell-like effect, and so this wouldn't work on it. I think I don't see that one getting as much use. Once you use this action, you can use it again, and you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you spend 7 sorcery points to use it. Okay, so they do have it on the capstone ability, but they've realised that it's pretty powerful, and so it costs 7 sorcery points instead of the normal 5. I quite like this ability. I think the heal on its own is very powerful. And the other 2 abilities, they're there, and when you get use out of them, especially this 6th level or lower one, the fact that you can stop a 6th level spell is pretty huge. I'd wonder if maybe like curses would count, because maybe they're technically added by the bestow curse spell, but used in a different way than you get access to. It'd be quite interesting to see. I think the Clockwork Soul, again, I think this is a element of, and I normally don't say this, but they've kind of figured out what the sorcerer needs from a subclass when they get to Tasha's, because Tasha's very much one of those ones that I feel like they've sort of got the idea in the bag, in the sense that they know that you need access to a bunch of spells that are thematic, in addition to the spells that in addition to the abilities you get from being a sorcerer, and then you need to just get a load of utility, or like interesting effects, right? And I think you sort of seen it with Aberrant Mind and Clockwork, that they sort of have it figured out. I think in combat, Clockwork Soul will be funner. Out of combat, Aberrant Mind will be funner. But I don't feel like that's one being better than the other. I think it's just a difference in specializations. Me personally. But yeah, they're both fine. Divine Soul. Now, Divine Soul gets Divine Magic, which isn't a spell list. It's a choose an affinity, and then you get one spell based on that affinity. So I think this, because this one's a bit older, they hadn't realised they really needed to just give you a spell list. I don't mind this because it was a step in the right direction. So I can't knock it, but it didn't go far enough in my opinion. The spells you get are all decent actually. Like Cure Wounds, very useful. Having the ability to heal is always useful. Inflict Wounds, also very useful. It's a powerful spell at that level. Bless and Bane are... I initially thought Bless was decent and Bane wasn't, but I found out that just both of them are good. And Protection from Evil and Good is a very good spell as well. But this one notably has something that is like a spell list because it gives you access to more spells than you would normally have. Because this says it lets you learn or replace a sorcery cantrip or a sorcery spell of first level or higher with a cleric spell list spell. So you effectively have access to 2 spell lists to make everything, which is very useful. Cleric spells have access to a lot of stuff that you don't get as a sorcerer, because the sorcerer's kind of just like a... In terms of spell list, it's kind of just like a more restricted wizard. Which everything's technically a more restricted wizard, but in the sense of the type of spells you get. You get utility through like teleportations, like telekinesis, these kinds of like these spells that can be used out of combat to like move around or get into interesting spaces, invisibility and stuff like that. And you get access to a load of damage spells. And the sorcerer is like that, except you've got access to less of the damage spells and less of the utility. And this goes, well, unlike all the other sorcerers, you have access to decent concentration spells that do damage over and over and over again to the enemy. And you've got decent access to healing spells, which you get no access to with the sorcerer or wizard spell list. Which means you can be an effective support. You also get Favoured by the Gods. Starting at first level, Divine Power guards your destiny. If you fail a saving throw or miss with an attack roll, you can roll 2d4 and add it to the total, possibly changing the outcome. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. It's not bad, it's a little extra thing, it doesn't seem like powerful, but if you're in a very important situation, where you have to hit with this attack, or you have to do you have to succeed in the saving throw, then you can use this. I think the only thing I think that this should have had, that I think would have made it much more useful in general, would have been for it not to say fail saving throw or miss with an attack roll, but instead to have said if you effectively fail a roll. Because the idea that I can use, because they're guarding my destiny, like, oh no, I'm about to fail to convince this guard to let me in. I use this ability, I roll 2d4, I add it on, I succeed. That kind of stuff I think would have been quite useful, and I don't think it would have been overpowered. Pardon me. Empowered Healing. Starting at 6th level, the divine energy coursing through you can empower healing spells. Whenever you or an ally within 5 feet of you roll die to determine the number of hit points a spell restores, you can spend 1 sorcery point to reroll any number of those dice once, provided you aren't incapacitated. You can only use this feature once per turn. This isn't bad. The idea that you can just go, oh god, I rolled your healing, but then I rolled like a bunch of wands, and I'm like, oh god, this is horrendous. It's like I'm not really healing you. The idea you can just go, I spend one sorcery point, I re-roll that, maybe I get a 6 this time, and it does change a lot of what the amount I'm healing you. It becomes pretty significant at that point. Not a bad ability, and I think it goes back to you get access to cleric stuff. So that plus this means you do change how you play compared to a normal sorcerer. You can be that backline healer that normally would be reserved to bards, and clerics generally. So yeah, I think this is really really cool. I think I think it suffers from the same thing that the favored from the gods ability suffered from, which is it suffers from being older. And I feel like these abilities made now would say differently. Like, I feel like if this was made in the Tasha's book, it would say you spend one sorcery point to re-roll any number of the numbers in that die. It would be slightly stronger. Starting at 14th level, you can use your bonus action to manifest a pair of spectral wings from your back. While the wings are present, you have a flying speed of 30 feet. The wings last until you're incapacitated, you die, or you dismiss them as a bonus action. The affinity you choose determines what kind of appearance they have. What I found quite interesting about this, by the way, because I had read this before, is you expect the eagle wings for good and law, you expect the bat wings for evil and chaos. I didn't expect dragonfly wings to be the neutrality one. The idea that insectoids are neutral. I don't mind that as a concept. I just found it quite interesting. Overall, this ability, as you can see, with the Aberrant Mind, you got like flying speed equal to your walking speed, um, which is effectively the same thing as this, because unless you've multi-classed into monk or yeah, I just guess if you just multi-classed into monk, or maybe I guess barbarian might get something like that as well. I've forgotten. Um, you're not gonna have higher speed than 30 feet, but I th- I think that this ability on its own doesn't feel like a 14th level ability at this point. Maybe I'm being spoiled by Tasha, and I know that there is a power, there's a constant power scaling problem with like they always have to make the next one more powerful so that people buy it. But I think this ability has lost a lot of its luster with the newer stuff coming out. I don't think it's bad though. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate it. I just don't like it because it's not as good as all the other stuff that's out now. And I want to specify this, and I think I have in almost every episode at this point, but I want to really get this uh, specified. If there's people here that are watching that are like, oh, I really like this, but I guess he said it's bad, so I shouldn't go with it. I'm talking only about my opinion, and at the end of the day, scaling doesn't matter. But sorry, let me rephrase that. Like how good you are compared to someone else doesn't matter. If you want to go divine magic, even though divine magic is not particularly strong compared to another one, who cares? You wanted to go with it. That's the idea you had. If it fits the backstory you've got and it's something you've always wanted to play it. I'm just talking about like my opinion of it, just as my gut feeling. Please do not take anything I say as like me saying you shouldn't play it. Uh, 18th level ability. Unearthly Recovery. At 18th level, you gain the ability to overcome grievous injuries. As a bonus action, when you have fewer than half of your hit points remaining, you can regain a number of hit points equal to half your hit point maximum. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So I kind of see this ability being useful. It will be useful. because it is effectively like a decent heal for you when you're getting low, especially at that level where your health will be at the point where you're probably healing maybe 40 from this if you're really good at it. I think I'm a bit disappointed because it's just it's not as flashy as the other abilities in my opinion. I think it's got its uses when you're downed and say somebody gets you up and you're on 1 health or something, or like on a small amount because they fed you a potion or something, and you just go, okay, bonus action, I get a bunch of points so that I can take maybe a couple hits. You know, I can take maybe 2 hits now, and it's less of a problem of you thinking of keeping me up, and I can focus 100% of my energy into making sure that you guys stay alive and get your turns. I think it's good. Yeah, it's not as flashy. Overall, I think it's good. Its front loaded abilities are decent. So it's 6th level and its 3rd level ability, sorry, 1st level ability are pretty good. The access to cleric spells and the access to this empowered healing to sort of re-roll, you'll get some uses for them. As the 6th level one more so just when you're at that 6th level. I think they're decent. I think the 14th level and the 18th level ability, I think they're a bit underwhelming, in my opinion. I like the flavour of getting a spell based on your affinity, because you could do this whole thing where it's like if your affinity changes or your character feels like they're being played in a way that isn't related to your affinity, you can the DM on you can come to the decision and go like, yeah, suddenly you've lost the ability to naturally cast Cure Wounds and you've learned the ability to naturally cast Inflict Wounds. Or, with the maybe we become more neutral and you just forget how to learn to use Cure Wounds naturally. You can still use it, obviously, because it's in the Cleric spell list, but still. I'd like it, and I think I'd like it, though. I like it not as much as the Tasha ones, but I think I'd like it if it even when it. I think I'd like it if all it got was the access to the cleric spell list. And that's just because I love clerics, and so I think my opinion on it is. I hate to do this because it's not really that much of an opinion, but it's kind of a meh. It's not bad. It's not great. I could take it or leave it. Really. Uh, I think it suffers, as I said before, very much from the idea of power scaling and the stuff getting more and more powerful with time. Draconic Sorcerer. Now this is the one I actually played. Back in the day, I played a Draconic Sorcerer Dragonborn, who's like he was a green Dragonborn, but he had a red Dragonborn. He had a red Draconic bloodline, and so his whole shtick was that he had green scales, but there was like red tips appearing on them. So it was a really cool like visual look. I didn't get a completely accurate impression of it because we were playing gritty realism, so I was severely restricted in the spells I could use because you had to save them because if you don't know what gritty realism is a short rest goes from being 4 hours to effectively a day, and then a long rest goes from 8 hours to a week. So it means that you have to keep it's not as easy to get your spells back, like, or any of your abilities that require that. I quite like that on a tangent. I quite like that because it meant it to me. It just felt like a general buff to martial classes, because it meant that the whole idea behind martial classes was, sure, you don't have the, you're not front loaded as good as the magic classes, in the sense that you don't, sure, you don't get access to as powerful burst damage as they do, but what you do get access to is longevity. In the long run, you'll be doing more damage than them because your base damage will be doing more than their cantrip. Plus, you've got the higher health, so you can survive longer on average. But what actually would happen is that most fights wouldn't last long enough for that part of it to ever matter. And so with gritty realism, you go, well, okay, sure, this one might not survive that long, but to even get a short rest, you have to take a day off. And that's not going to get you much of your spells back. So I quite liked it, even though I was playing a magic caster at that moment. So, enough of my rambling. Although it does say rambling in the title of this, so you got to expect that kind of thing. First level ability, Dragon Ancestry. Sorry about my misspeaking and stuff. It's just I'm just bad at reading. You choose one of the dragon ancestors. The damage type is associated with each of the dragons. So you've got the basic sort of thing that you'd see. It's effectively what each of the dragons breathe. So it's effectively like you have an equivalent from the metallic and the chromatic, except for the one exception where one of them does poison, the green dragon, and one of them, I think the metallics double up on fire because they have gold and brass that I think both do fire. In addition, you can speak and read and write Draconic. And when you use a charisma check when interacting with dragons, your proficiency bonus is doubled if it's applied to the check. That's pretty cool. I like the narrative behind that. You expected when it says dragon for it to have this sort of sheet here where it's like, choose your damage type. So I kind of assumed that. The reading and speaking Draconic, it makes complete sense. That's just something you always get access to. It's a flavorful thing with almost any sort of thing associated with dragons. Well, frankly, any sort of species, you normally learn their language as an additional thing. The charisma check when interacting with dragons, I think will be interesting. It won't come up a lot, but when it comes up, it'll probably be story related to you. Because of that, you'll be actually quite happy with it as like a little thing to make sure that you succeed on that. Draconic Resilience. As magic flows through your body, it causes physical traits of your draconic ancestry to emerge. At first level, your hit point maximum increases by 1, and increases by 1 again when you gain a level in this class. So it's effectively like half of the tough feat, because I think that gives you +2 every level. Additionally, part of your skin is covered with a thin sheen of dragon-like scales. When you aren't wearing armor, your AC is equal to 13 plus your dex modifier. The interesting thing about that is it's just giving you a little buff to your AC, because in general, you'll be using light armor. I don't think you get access to even medium armor proficiency. You might get medium armor. No, you get access to no armor proficiencies. I assumed you got access to light armor, but you get access to no armor proficiencies. So this is effectively going +3 to your AC, because you'll have base 10 plus your oh no, you'll have base 8 plus your dexterity modifier. So this just goes, okay, well, instead of having base 8, you have base 13. So it is relevant because it's bumping it by 5. So yeah, this is quite useful. And it's thematic. In general, the Draconic Ancestry, the Dragon Ancestry one feels like it might be there to facilitate a later ability. Because as far as I can see here, all it says is choose the dragon, that's your dragon, you gain Draconic Charisma check. Charisma checks have effectively expertise when you're dealing with dragons. So I'm assuming it's going to be more useful later on. Or maybe like a breath weapon or resistances or something. The Draconic Resilience is very interesting. Because I don't think it'd go as far to... I wouldn't go as far to say it's one of those ones that fundamentally changes the way you play the game. Like the access to Cleric spell one. But it does mean that you are less worried about being in the situation where you're dealing with a lot of like attacks coming at you, because now your AC is, it's 5 higher. Now it's not to the level of your martial classes probably have it, where they're like either specialized into it or they're wearing armor that just gives them a base higher than yours. But it's pretty decent for a backline spellcaster. You'll be higher than the wizard most of the time, probably. I missed one. There. Elemental Affinity. Starting at 6th level, whenever you cast a spell that deals damage of the type associated with your Draconic ancestry, you can add your Charisma modifier to 1 damage roll of that spell. At the same time, you can spend 1 sorcery point to gain resistance to that damage type for 1 hour. I just want to double check something. So you don't get a breath weapon. Damn, I just assumed this one got a breath weapon. It's been a while since I played it. In terms of this Elemental Affinity ability, I quite like it. Gives you a little bit of extra damage on something that technically your bloodline or your blessing is associated with. I think the spend 1 sorcery point to get resistance to that damage type will not come up a lot. Because although it's not technically true that anything that uses a damage type, anything that uses a specific kind of damage is resistant to that kind of damage, a lot of the time that's true. So if I'm dealing with a fire elemental, for one thing, I'm not going to be casting fire spells at him, right? But I'd want the resistance, and if I'm fighting something that's weak to fire, like a wood elemental, I want to be casting the fire spell, but at the end of the day, I don't care about a fire resistance. So they feel like there's not a lot of situations where you want to be dealing this damage type against the enemy, while also gaining resistance to that damage type. The only situation I could see where this would be useful is if you're surrounded by guys, and you go, okay, I use Fireball, I target myself as the originator of this spell, it gets everyone that's surrounding me, but I'm going to spend a sorcery point to make sure I'm resistant to the damage, to fire damage, and so it's like, well, good luck. Also quite notable, sorry, to go back to it, with Elemental Affinity, is it kind of works together with the meta magic ability that allows you to change the damage type of the spell. Because now you can change it to the damage type that you are associated with, and then add the Charisma modifier to it, which is pretty cool. I like that ability, by the way, if I hadn't said. Dragon Wings. For some reason the word dragon there looked weird. So I was about to say dragoon, because I thought, oh, it looks like dragon, but it's not actually dragon, because it looks weird. But I think it might just be I've never seen it I haven't seen it often in all capitals like that. At 14th level, you gain the ability to sprout a pair of dragon wings from your back, gaining a flying speed equal to your current speed. You can create these wings as a bonus action on your turn, and they last until you dismiss them as a bonus action on your turn. You can't manifest your wings while wearing armor unless the armor is made to accommodate them. And clothes not made to accommodate your wings might be destroyed when you manifest them. Nice little flavour thing there. I mean, I said a very similar thing when the Divine Sorcerer came up, but this ability doesn't interest me. there is stuff you can use both in and out of combat for flying speeds. Right? There's like weird things you can do where like if you're dealing with something that for some reason doesn't have maybe a particularly powerful ranged attack. Because I think most DMs will give everything a form of ranged attack, so that you're not in a situation where you've just locked them out of ever getting into combat with you. Um, you can do some shenanigans where it's like, yeah, sure, I'm in this space that's next to him, but actually I'm like 20 feet up, so he can't hit me. But I don't know, that feels a bit fiddly, and I never like that. To me, it feels a bit metagamey, and I don't think it is, and I don't think there's technically anything wrong with doing that. It's just using your ability to the highest effectiveness. But to me, it always feels a bit weird. It always feels a bit iffy, and I don't like doing that. And there's obviously there's bits in like out of combat where like being able to fly would be helpful. Oh no, we need to get up into that room. Okay, I'll fly and unlock the window and go in, or like, oh no, we need to get on top of this tower. Well, I'll go up there. I'll throw down a rope, you guys, and I'll tie a rope there, and you guys can come up that way. There's useful uses for it. I just don't think it's particularly interesting, and it makes it's a lot more. It's a lot less unique when of the like 5 sorcery sorcerer subclasses I've done at the moment. 3 of them have had 14th level abilities that have given you the ability to fly. So it's not unique. And I know of other classes that add flying as well. So it's not a particularly unique skill either to Sorcerer. Draconic Presence. At 18th level, you can channel the dread presence of your draconic ancestor, causing those around you to become awestruck or frightened. As an action, you can spend 5 sorcery points to draw on this power and exude an aura of awe or fear, your choice, to a distance of 60 feet. For 1 minute or until you lose concentration, as if you were concentrating on a spell. Each hostile creature that starts its turn in the aura must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, or be charmed if you chose awe, or frightened if you chose fear. Until the aura ends. A creature that succeeds on the saving throw is immune to the aura for 24 hours. So I could be wrong here. So I need to double check here to see if it's in the base rules. Not that, that, and that.
Hey guys, I miss you. Listen, we really need to get together again.
What the fuck was that? Okay, so that was an advert that just started playing. I hate that. I don't know how to stop it either, but I stopped any music coming from the desktop audio. So I hope you guys don't hear that anymore, but still hear me. I'm just gonna double check if that's actually true. By the way, sorry about the poor quality here. I'm bad at this. So let's just check. Yeah, it seems fine. Cool. Yes, I watch myself. I'm most of the time I'm the only viewer. Let's be honest. So I gotta have something. But yeah, I've just to make sure that doesn't happen again, I've just turned off the desktop audio. Luckily, it's not needed at the moment. Jesus, these adverts are getting more and more intrusive. So, as I was saying before, this ability is interesting because it's a sort of permanent charm or frighten. Now, I say permanent, and I'm using that completely wrong. It's a minute, but they don't get to. They don't get to do the. You know what? Give me a second. I'm muting that because it was getting annoying. It was playing again. The fucking Catalonian I don't know. I'm not going to even say it. I think it's some sort of holiday thing. Anyway, what's interesting about this is that they don't get to save every turn, which is pretty interesting. Um, which I don't think I've seen on any other ability, which I think changes this from being initially what I thought to be a really annoying ability that just wouldn't come up. Because now, if they fail the charm or fail the frighten, they're stuck with that frighten or charm. I think generally you're probably going for frighten, because charm I think inherently has the thing where if you do damage to it. Oh, it doesn't say it there. Maybe it says it in the conditions and diseases specifics. Maybe it doesn't say it there. But if that thing if that thing there says uh charmed and frightened and it's permanent no matter what you do to them, then this becomes incredible. If it doesn't say that, and it charms inherently does have the ability where they can roll every time they get hit. Doesn't say it here, so I'm going to assume that it's a minute charm or frighten, and nothing can stop that unless you dispel, I guess, the magic-like ability. Or no, I guess you could lesser restoration it away. This is actually quite good. I think I'm going to be saying this about a lot of sorcerer subclasses where I wish it had an ability to do it again for sorcery points, because I don't think there's any disadvantage to adding that to your abilities. Um, it's a 60 feet aura. So that's huge. You're probably getting a lot of people with that. Statistically, you're probably getting one or two of them in the failing the charm or frighten. I think this is pretty useful, and it's actually upped my impression of this subclass, honestly. Overall, I think the first level ones are weirdly underwhelming. I think this AC thing does change how you play a bit, but I don't find it incredibly interesting for combat or utility really. This elemental affinity kind of feels like it's the actual first level ability that you need there instead of that random list. Well, not random list, but the dragon list. I think it's really, really cool. I just don't think you want to be having the resistance to the damage and be using that damaging spell at the same time. The Dragon Wings one, it's underwhelming. It's starting to become now like the Rangers. I can put a resistance as a reaction on people ability, but for the Sorcerer, in the sense that it seems to be the base thing they go with. I hope I'm wrong. And the Draconic Presence sort of brought it back, in my opinion, because of the fact that they don't make a save every turn, which is pretty cool. Sure, you have this ability where it says they're immune to the effect of the aura if they succeed, but it's pretty cool. I still think it's pretty cool. Overall, I don't mind Draconic Sorcerer. I think it's just a bit underwhelming with a couple of its abilities, notably the one that adds wings, and the one that all it does is adds the ability to read Draconic and have better chances of interacting with Draconic. Not because not because both of them are just utility abilities, but because everyone else on their first level abilities have sort of set out how you play a Draconic Sorcerer. And I think that one didn't show off like the message of how you're supposed to play this one as well. I think if you took the 6th level ability and you put it as an addition to the first level ability, I think it would be better at sort of getting the image across of what it wants. Lunar is a Matt Mercer one. I think, or it's a Dragon Lance. It's a Dragon Lance one. But now I haven't any idea about Dragon Lance. I've heard it's quite a dark sort of setting that's a bit bleak. Um, that's all I know about it. Um, this one gives you access to 3 spell lists, so they've gone even further. Um, the count as additional spells. When you finish a long rest, you can choose what lunar phase manifests its power through your magic. Full moon, new moon, crescent moon. While in the chosen phase, you can cast one first level spell of the associated phase in the lunar spell table once without expanding a spell slot. Once you cast a spell in this way, you can't do so until you finish a long rest. So in addition to just giving you a spell list, this goes, why not instead of one spell list, you get 3 small spell lists, right? And then it in addition goes, okay, you can switch between them every long rest. And you're going to get 1 free first level spell slot. That's pretty decent. You normally get that from like a feat or something. What about the I do that when I don't know what to say. Yeah, I did it again. The full moon seems to be very much around both healing, keeping people alive, and getting rid of effects. So you got shields just to keep people alive. Same with lesser restoration and death ward, and the spell magic's there to get effects off them. So it feels like it's very much a community sort of support one. On the other hand, New Moon seems to be very much about debuffing the enemy, and damage is sort of a side thing. So you've got sickness that will try and poison them, blindness, deafness, which try and blind them or deafen them, vampiric touch to sort of take some of their health, confusion to sort of like make sure that I think they maybe like start like they do a random behavior, hold monsters to keep them in place, and then finally Crescent Moon seems to be very much about misdirection and illusion. So color spray is very much one of those ones that makes it so that they're either blind or something. Kind of like from what I can gather, it's like a sleep, but it's to blindness in the sense that you roll for their health. Alter Self is all about illusion. Phantom Steed is technically illusion. Same with hallucinogenic terrain and mislead. They're all like illusionary manipulating things kind of ones. Overall, I love this ability. I don't think it needs to be like this, but I understand for the lore that it sort of makes sense. I'm guessing there's something I'm missing where like I guess if your bloodline is the moon, you'd worship all the parts of the moon. But me personally, I don't think it needs this many spells. I understand it's limited, but if they were one thing, I wouldn't want them together. The limitation I think needs to be there. And the extra first level spell slot is pretty good. It's not bad. Early on it'll be really good. Later on it'll be okay. You might even forget about it. Moonfire. You can call down the radiant light of the moon on command. You learn the Sacred Flame spell, which doesn't count against the number of sorcerer cantrips you know. When you cast the spell, you can target one creature as normal, or target 2 creatures within range that are within 5 feet of each other. Okay, I'm a big fan of these abilities where it's like, here's a cantrip, you can use the cantrip in a different way. This is another one like that. I like the limited sort of like potential AoE in the sense that it could hit 2 people. No problem with that. Overall, I like both of the first level abilities. Can't complain. The only thing that I'd say was a bit confusing is at this point I don't understand where you're going with this subclass. Like, what's the niche it's trying to fit? 6th level. The current phase of your lunar embodiment can affect your meta magic features. Each lunar embodiment phase is associated with a certain school of magic. Okay, yeah, I can sort of see that. That makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. When you use meta magic on a spell of the school of magic associated with your current lunar embodiment phase, you can reduce the number of sorcery points spent by 1, minimum 0. You can reduce the sorcery points spent for your meta magic a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So if we have a quick look at meta magic, you'll see a decent amount of them actually only cost 1. So the idea that you can just take 1 off of it is at max making it free. At minimum, it's probably halving the cost of it. The exception, of course, is always twinned spell, because that's associated with your spell level of the level of the spell you're trying to twin. But still, that's a very useful ability. And probably whichever lunar phase you're in is probably what you're focusing on at that moment, whether it's support, damage, or illusion manipulation. Although notably, they haven't given evocation 1, which I guess makes sense to a certain extent, because I don't associate the moon with destruction. Waxing and waning. You gain greater control over the phases of your lunar magic. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 sorcery point to change your current lunar embodiment phase to a different one. You can now cast 1 first level spell for each lunar phase of the lunar spell table once without expending a spell slot. Okay, so from what I can gather from this, they're saying is you get the access to a bonus action, 1 sorcery point you can switch your lunar phase. In addition to getting access to all those spells that you'd get access to for free, you also get a free first level spell slot as if you had chosen that for a long rest. But you get that for each of the phases you go into, which I think sort of cements actually how you're playing this, which is the idea is you have a load of spells that you have access to, and you want to be switching and going into the moon that is associated with what you're doing. Overall, I like both of these abilities. I think they're really cool, and they're building on what was done by the first level ability. 14th level ability, Lunar Empowerment. The power of a lunar phase saturates your being. While you are in a lunar embodiment phase, you can also gain the following benefits associated with that phase. You can use a bonus action to shed bright light in the 10-foot radius or dim light for additional 10 foot, or to douse the light. In addition, you and creatures of your choice have advantage on investigation and perception checks while you're within bright light you shed. Okay, that's interesting. I could see some out of combat uses for that. I could see some in combat uses for maybe trying to detect invisible people or something. New moon, you have advantage on stealth checks. In addition, while you're entirely in darkness, attack rolls against you have disadvantage. That's pretty interesting, because I think the way it's worded, while you are entirely in darkness, attack rolls have disadvantage against you. I think the way it's worded, if you're in a situation where everyone has dark vision, so you're not caring about light, and you're in a dark area, and you're dealing with a boss, the boss has just disadvantage against you, even if they have alternate sights and can see you perfectly. That's kind of cool. I like that. And then Crescent Moon is you have resistance to necrotic and radiant damage, which I feel like is a bit of a cop-out. Crescent Moon to me feels like they just ran out of ideas when they got to Crescent Moon. Because I look at that and go, both of them have a base ability they do, and then a little extra thing that they have. Full Moon has the bright light and the advantage on perception and investigation. New Moon has the stealth check thing and the disadvantage on attack rolls against you in darkness. And then Crescent Moon has resistance to necrotic and radiant, and then there's not this additional one that like has some flavour to it, which is a bit of a shame. Overall, though, the two other abilities are really cool, and I think we'll get a decent amount of use out of them. The New Moon one allows you to sort of be a bit more stealthy that you wouldn't sort of expect from a sorcerer. To sneak in, maybe in addition with the rogue that is also going in, and also means occasionally when they're shooting at you, they have a disadvantage against you, which means you're less likely to get hit, which is huge because you don't have a lot of health compared to the martial classes. Although you're not a wizard, so you're not that bad. Yeah, and then I think the full moons are one that will come out less often, but when it does, it will be useful. I see it more as an out of combat thing, where it's like, we're investigating this place. I activate my light to shed, find out the secrets of this area. But yeah, I think both of those are cool, and then you have the Crescent Moon one, which I guess if you're dealing with something you know does necrotic and or radiant damage, you activate this one and go, cool, this helps me survive now. Lunar Phenomenon. As a bonus action, you can tap into a special power of your current lunar embodiment phase. Alternatively, as part of the bonus action you take to change your lunar phase using the waxing and waning feature, you can immediately use the power of the lunar phase you are entering. Okay, so in addition to giving you a power you can do naturally by being in the phase you're in now, when you switch, you get the other power. That's cool. At full moon, you radiate moonlight for a moment. Each creature of your choice within 30 feet of you must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC, or be blinded until the end of its next turn. In addition, one creature of your choice in that area regains 3d8 hit points. That one isn't particularly powerful, but I've got to see this as all of them. It's like 1/3 of your ability, right? Because you have access to all of these if you just spend a sorcery point to switch to them. So being able to go, I switch to the healing one, the healing moon. I blind everybody so that I get a chance to get some heals on you, and I'm just going to start off the healing by healing this person by 3d8. Is pretty useful, and I think pretty significant, I guess. New Moon, you momentarily emanate gloom. Each creature of your choice within 30 feet of you must succeed on a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC, or take 3d10 necrotic damage and have its speed reduced to 0 until the end of its next turn. In addition, you become invisible until the end of your next turn, or until immediately after you make an action, roll, or cast a spell. So attack, roll, or cast a spell. That one seems a bit more significant, because it's a big AoE. It reduces their speed in addition to the AoE. Now, admittedly, blinded is a powerful condition. I just think at 18th level, being blinded doesn't affect somebody who's got blind sense, or true sight, or tremor sense, or any of these other multiple sights that I've said many, many times come up and are very useful. So I wonder if you can get blinded by those. I haven't dealt with the blinding condition too much, but I think if you have one of those alternate sights, blinded is borderline useless. I could be wrong. But as I was saying with the New Moon one, it does a lot more damage than what you're getting from the heal from the full moon. I think that's pretty significant. Like you're not gonna be annoyed about that. In addition, it will reduce their speed to 0. Now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, I think if they succeed in the saving throw, nothing happens to them, which is a debuff that I didn't realise until now. So that's a shame. That does lower it a bit, but you are getting 3 of these abilities, so it's not too bad. You going invisible in addition is very useful because it just means that you very likely can. Not only is the speed possibly 0, but you can get away from them invisible, so they don't even know where you've gone. Assuming they don't have an alternate sight. Crescent Moon. You can magically teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 60 feet of yourself. You can bring along one willing creature you can see within 5 feet of yourself. That creature teleports to an unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within 5 feet of yourself. Yep. In addition, you and that creature gain resistance to all damage until the start of your next turn. That one's pretty decent as well. All of them seem powerful, but not overly powerful. And I quite like it because you get 3 little abilities that I think I prefer over 1 big ability, because a lot of the time with the 1 big abilities, big abilities, they'll just be like, cool, I used this. It fails. Cool, I got nothing then. You know, it feels like that. Also notably with this one that I hadn't read yet is if you want to use these bonus features again, you can. You just have to spend 5 sorcery points. But if not, you get them back at a long rest, right? So it has that sort of newer ability where you can get them back. I think these are cool. I think spending 5 sorcery points for these feels worse because they're not as powerful as a normal ability. I think I would spend 5 sorcery points less on these than I would any of the others that have this ability. But I think each of these abilities is really cool. And I think in general, for the Lunar Sorcerer, I quite like what it's going for with the switching of these spell lists. I think notably, these spell lists only go up to 9th level Sorcerer. Not 9th level spell, 9th level Sorcerer. So these spells are all 5th level. So it does lose it out as soon as you stop getting more spell lists for this. And I do like it. I'm thinking to myself, I like this ability. I like them 1st level abilities. I like what the 6th level ability does with them. I like what you get from the 14th. And the 18th is alright. So overall, I think I'm generally very positive on this one. Runechild. Now this one is the Matt Mercer one. Yeah, this is the Tal'Dorei one. Essence Runes. At 1st level, your body begins to express your innate magic as runes traced across your skin. You start with 1 Essence Rune. Gain an additional rune whenever you gain a level in this class. God, you're going to have a lot of them on your body. These runes can manifest anywhere on your body, though the first usually manifests on the forehead. Your Essence Runes remain invisible when inert. At the end of your turn, during which you spent 1 or more sorcery points, a number of your essence runes equal to the number of sorcery points you spend begin to glow with stored energy, becoming charged runes. You can use these charged runes to power your Runechild subclass features. Also, as a bonus action, you may spend a sorcery point to convert 2 essence runes into charge runes. If you have no sorcery points and no charge runes, you convert a single essence rune into a charge rune as an action. If you have 5 or more charged runes, you emit a bright light in a 5-foot radius and dim light an additional 5 foot. If you expand a charged rune to use one of your Runechild features, it returns to being an inert essence rune. Any charged runes also revert to inert runes after you finish a long rest. Okay, so you can't keep them forever. This is a setup ability, right? So I can't really judge this until I see what you can use it for. Rune Magic. Beginning at 1st level, you learn additional spells when you reach certain levels. Yep, you have the rune table. When you gain a level in this class, you can replace 1 spell you've gained from this feature with another spell of the same level. The new spell must be an abjuration or transmutation from the sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell list. So this one does a similar thing to the Clockwork, where you have access to a lot more spell lists, but for specific things. It might be, it's either very similar or it's the same types as well. I quite like that. That gives you more to do. And it's a bit limited because it's just whenever you replace one of the spells you gain from this feature. So you're only ever getting like, what is that, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 spells from those lists. So you're not completely replacing that class. In terms of spells you get, Longstrider is okay. I don't think I've ever used this, and I don't think I ever would. Protection from Evil and Good is very, very useful, as I said before. Same with Lesser Restoration. Protection from Poison won't get too much use. Glyph of Warding is very useful for protecting the area you're in. Same with Magic Circle. Death Ward can save you in potentially horrendous situations. Freedom of Movement I don't get too much use out of, but in certain situations I could see its use, and that's just me, I think just me being a bit generous there. Greater Restoration is very, very useful, and so is Telekinesis. I kind of feel like a lot of these are very similar to a different spell list I've looked at, I just don't remember which one. But yeah, they are generally decent spells. Except for a couple there that are Longstrider and Freedom of Movement come to mind that I don't think I'd get much use out of, me personally. Glyph of Aegis. Starting at first level, you can release the stored arcane power within your runes to absorb or deflect threatening attacks. Whenever you take damage, you can expend any number of charged runes as a reaction. Roll a number of d6 equal to the number of runes you expended and reduce the damage taken by that total. I like this. So you're going through a couple of hoops to get the actual charged runes. But, and I think based on what it said there, you can only have a number of charge runes equal to your level. So you got to do through a hoop of spending a sorcery point, but you get this extra little thing that goes, cool. This also will help you survive, in addition to all the damage you're probably bringing out. I really like that as an idea. It is bordering onto the maybe too many things to track. I don't think it is. I don't think it's too many at the moment. But I think if you added one more, it might be too many. Like if it was like, I have sorcery points, and then I have essence runes, and then when essence runes are used up, I get echoes, and echoes can be used for something. I think it would get too much. But as it is now, I think that's perfectly fine. The idea that you get these things that can protect you is very useful because at the end of the day, you are squishy, both in AC and in health. So you need something to save yourself because ranged people can still hit you. I'm looking forward to seeing what the runes do in addition to the protecting thing. When you reach 6th level, you can touch a creature as an action and expend up to 3 charge runes to transfer your protective power to it for up to an hour. Pardon me, my voice is going. The next time that creature takes damage within the next hour, it rolls 1d6 per charge rune spent and reduces the damage by that total. You can't transfer this power to a creature already under the effect of the glyph. Okay. So, when you hit 6th level, you can start using your action to give this to other people. Which is decent. If you think you're not going to get hurt too much, giving it to your martial class to keep him in longer, or maybe to one of your more squishy DPS style people, will be very useful. It is a shame that it takes an action. I think that's the only downside to this, is because an action's huge when you're playing these games, because that's effectively your main part of your turn. So it's a shame that it does take an action. At 6th level, you can channel your runes to temporarily bolster your physical capabilities. When you make a Strength, Dex, or Constitution ability check, you can expend a charged rune as a reaction to gain advantage on that roll. In addition, when you are forced to make a Strength, Dex, or Constitution saving throw, you can use your reaction to expend a charged rune to give advantage on that saving throw. Once you use this feature, you can't use it this way until you complete a long rest. I quite like this. Initially, I was going to get down on it because of I only saw the first line of text. The second line of text is very useful because now you're in a situation where normally the people could guarantee that they go, okay, the sorcerer probably not going to be that good at strength, probably not going to be that good at constitution. They might have a decent amount of dex because it's the only way you get an AC. But now it's like, oh shit, now I at least have a one-time boom, I have advantage, so I'm more likely to succeed now. In terms of the doing it for strength, dex, and constitution checks, I think the only situation I could see that would be really, really useful in combat would be grappling. Other than that, I can see a decent amount of application out of combat where it's like, okay, we need to get up here. You need you to balance here. Please succeed on this dexterity check, and you're like, okay, I do. I wonder if it works if you're using dexterity for like acrobatics and stuff. I hope it does because that makes it much more useful. In addition, you get manifest inscriptions. Also at 6th level, you can reveal hidden glyphs and enchantments that surround you. As an action, you can expend one charged rune to reveal hidden or invisible arcane traps, marks, runes, wards, sensors, or glyphs within 60 feet of you. They glow with dim light in 5-foot radius for 1 minute. You have advantage on arcane checks to discern the nature of any magic revealed in this way for the duration. If the glyphs you reveal mean something in a language you can't read, you can understand them while they are glowing as if you knew the language. I think there's a lot of cool mechanical stuff with that's really interesting. I think if you've got a decent DM and they see you get this kind of ability, you'll get really cool and interesting moments from this where like stuff that you are doing will come up. You know, like stuff related to this will come up, and you'll seem like, oh, cool, I'm using the ability and I'm getting use out of it, and my experience with runes is coming up. I quite like this ability. 14th level. It buffs your d6s to d8s. That's huge. That's just a general buff to a bunch of your abilities. Both the one putting it on the allies and putting it on yourself. That's huge. And it's needed at that level because d6s stop becoming as big of a thing, really. Upon reaching 14th level, you can channel runic energy to overpower even the staunchest defenses. When you cast a spell, you can expend 2 charged runes to cause the spell to deal force damage instead of its usual damage types. Additionally, all creatures targeted by the spell or within the spell's area must succeed in a strength save against your spell save DC or be knocked prone or pushed 15 feet away from the spell point's origin, your choice. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. You cast a spell, use 2 charged runes to cause it to deal force damage, which means probably it's hitting for full damage no matter what, because force damage is one of the rarest things to have resistances to do, or resistances for and immunity and or immunities. In addition, if it's an AoE, say Fireball, which obviously wouldn't be as good now, but an AoE damaging spell like Fireball, you can also make it so they're knocked prone, or are pushed 15 feet. That's pretty useful. Also, notably, it doesn't necessarily have to do damage. It says it causes the spell's damage to deal force instead, right? But if the spell has no damage, can you still use this ability? Could I use it on Entangle, for example? I don't think they get access to Entangle, but like some sort of crowd control ability like that, and have it where like they're in a web but also they're prone no matter if they succeed on the thing or not. Because that would be really cool. Or spike growth. I know you can't do this, by the way, because I don't think you get access to spike growth. But imagine this spike growth down, and you push them 15 feet, and they take the damage from the spike growth. That'd be funny. Overall, I like those two abilities. It's a one-time pretty cool ability that you get back on a short rest, which is notable for some people, not necessarily for me, because we don't really do short rests in our games. And it doesn't cost too much, and it just changes the damage type, so it's useful. I think it's quite a useful ability. Plus a general buff to your Glyph of Aegis as well, which is decent. Arcane Exemplar. Starting at 18th level, you can use your bonus action to expend a charged rune to become a being of pure magical energy. While in your Exemplar form, you gain the following benefits. You have a flying speed of 60 feet. What is with later game abilities and giving sorcerers flying speed? I don't know. Luckily, this isn't the only ability there, but still. What is with them? Creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against your sorcery spells. That's pretty huge. It makes all your saving throw abilities actually likely to hit against some of the bosses you'll be dealing with at that point. You have resistance to damage dealt by spells. Could be useful if you're dealing with a wizard type boss, but a lot of spell like effects are used nowadays. Whenever you cast a spell of first level or higher, you regain hit points equal to the spell's level. Nice little top up for yourself. Because they don't want to be spending their healing on you, they want to be spending it on the things taking the hits, right? So having it where you're just passively healing, because you're not going to be in combat too much, is pretty decent. It lasts until the end of your turn. Oh, that's annoying. It could have lasted a minute and it would have been cool. However, you can expend a charged rune at the end of your turn to extend the duration until the end of your next turn. When it ends, you are stunned until the end of your next turn. Interesting. This feature is a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, at this point, you would have 18 potential ways to charge your, like, runes that you can charge, right? But you've got to make sure that you've used a lot of meta magic before activating this form so that you can use a lot of the runes to keep this form up. Which is kind of interesting, because to use meta magic, you want to be casting spells. But if you're casting spells, I mean, you can't. I mean, you have less spells to use when you're in this form. I quite like that. I'm also a big fan of forms when they're like you can turn into a super form. So this one tickles my fancy in that aspect. Overall, I've said this for a lot of Matt Mercer's ones. He really gets the flavour and the feel very well, except for like a couple of exceptions. This one very much gets the feel of it. Of like the idea of a class that's fully made around doing something and adding a new aspect to the sorcerer. It reminds me a lot of bards. There was a bard subclass where it's like you put a bardic inspiration on them, but there's that little extra thing that you get from it. It was like a moat that gives them a little extra thing. And this one goes, you've used a meta magic, but you get this little extra thing for doing that. And I quite like that. Right, shadow magic. Starting at first level, you have dark vision with a range of 120 feet, which is pretty big. When you reach third level in this class, you learn the darkness spell, which doesn't count against your sorcerer spell list spells known. In addition, you can cast it by spending 2 sorcerer points or by expending a spell slot. If you cast it with sorcering points, you can see through the darkness created by that spell. Now that actually makes darkness spell a lot more useful than it normally is. I will say that it's still going to have limited uses because even though you can see through it, all of your group can't see through it, which is a big problem. But it does buff that spell, and just getting the access to 120 feet dark vision is notable. So I don't mind that ability. I don't think it's incredible though. Strength of the Grave. Starting at first level, your existence in a twilight state between life and death makes you difficult to defeat. When damage reduces you to 0 points, you can make a Charisma saving throw, DC 5 plus the damage taken. On a success, you instead drop to 1 hit point. You can't use this feature if you're reduced to 0 hit points by radiant or critical hits. After the saving throw succeeds, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. So it's a very much a like, oh, you thought you killed me? Nope, I'm up at 1. I like that ability. I like both of these abilities. They're not incredible, and they don't, to me, specifically cement how you're supposed to play the subclass, but I think they're cool. I don't think there's any problems with them. I just don't think you'll get, even with the buff to darkness, I don't think you'll use the darkness too much. Hound of Ill Omen. At 6th level, you gain the ability to call forth a howling creature of darkness to harass your foes. As a bonus action, you spend 3 sorcery points to magically summon a Hound of Ill Omen to target one creature you can see within 120 feet of you. The Hound uses the Direwolf statistics. The Hound is size medium, not large, and it counts as monstrous, not a beast. It appears with a number of temporary hit points equal to half your sorcery level. So at this point it would be 3. It can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, taking 5d force damage if it ends its turn inside an object. At the start of its turn, the Hound automatically knows its target's location. If the target is hidden, it is no longer hidden for the Hound. It appears in an unoccupied space within 30 feet of your target. Roll initiative for the Hound. On its turn, it can move only towards its target by the most direct route, and it can use its action only to attack its target. The Hound can make opportunity attacks, but only against its target. In addition, while the Hound is within 5 feet of the target has disadvantage on saving throws against any spell you cast. It disappears when it reduces to 0, or after 5 minutes. I like this. It's a cool ability because it's the kind of ability you'd see like a evil like Beastmaster have in movies and games and stuff, right? It's like, I send my Hound after you, and no matter where you go, no matter how you hide, I will find you. And it's not, early on it'll be like a decent damage it's doing, but later on what you're doing with that is just going, you can't get out of my sight because I know where you are always, and you have disadvantage on saving throws against my spells when it gets near. So I quite like that because it kind of scales. The extra health isn't going to come up even later on. An extra 10 health on a direwolf that has like, what is that, 37 health. It's not going to change too much. But it'll still be useful because it's just you're sending this Hound out for not a lot of sorcery points, especially later on, to sort of track them and make sure that they never leave your sight effectively, or you never don't know their location. Shadow Walk. At 14th level, you gain the ability to step from one shadow into another. While you are in dim light or darkness, as a bonus action, you can magically teleport up to 120 feet to an unoccupied space you can see that is also dim light or darkness. This is very cool. This means this effectively says to me, you're never gonna be able to keep me in combat with you, because I'm just always going to be in dim light, and I'm always going to teleport to some other dim light really far away from you. You probably have to either spend your whole turn getting to me and not being able to attack, or you're going to have to hit me with a ranged attack. And even then, some ranged attacks have 60 feet range, like some spells and stuff, so maybe you can't even hit me in range. I really like that ability, which is rare for like a middling late level ability, like a 14th level ability, because normally they're a bit underwhelming. Well, normally they give me wings, and I don't like that. Humble Form. Starting at 18th level, you can spend 6 sorcery points as a bonus action to magically transform yourself into a shadowy form. In this form, you have resistance to all damage except Force and Radiant, which aren't very, very relevant. Like, they don't come up that much. Radiant comes up a decent amount, but Force almost never. And you can move through all creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, taking 5 force damage if you end your turn inside an object. It lasts a minute, or until you die or incapacitated, or if you dismiss it as a bonus action. This is cool. It makes sure you're definitely not going to get as damaged, and it allows you to move into an optimal position that you're not going to get hurt. My only gripe with it is it doesn't boost the damage output that you're sending out. I think it could have easily had another line of text that said, in addition, while in this form, get an additional like D6 necrotic damage on all spells you cast. I think that would have been fine. But that's just a personal opinion. Overall, I'm quite surprised with the Shadow Sorcerer, because I went into it thinking, oh, this is an older one. You know, it came from Xanathar. I expect it to not be that interesting and, you know, not do anything that unique compared to some of the other ones we've seen. But it's delightfully. It's actually surprised me a lot. I think I put it, in terms of abilities you get, I probably put it higher than Divine Soul, that came out at the same time. But I think just Runechild, Lunar, Clockwork, and Aberrant Mind have just, you know, they've just improved on the formula that already existed for Sorcerer subclasses. But I put it higher than Draconic, and I put it higher than Divine, in my opinion. Which wouldn't have been before I read it. Before, I would have made the initial impression that actually Divine Soul and Draconic were higher up. Storm Sorcery. The arcane magics you command is infused with elemental air. You can speak, read, and write Primordial. Knowing this language allows you to understand and be understood by those who speak its dialects. So you can speak Elemental, is effectively what it's saying, which makes sense thematically. Starting at first level, you can use your bonus action on your turn to create whirling gusts of elemental air to briefly surround you immediately before or after you cast a spell of first level or higher. Doing so allows you to fly up to 10 feet without provoking opportunity attacks. So this just allows you to get out of combat effectively. It allows you, if you wanted to cast a touch spell on the enemy and then leave. I don't know what you'd want to cast, like what touch spells you'd want to cast on the enemy. I guess like if you can get access to Bestow Curse or something, it might be useful. But more specifically, I think what happens with this is what you do is you cast some form of saving throw based spell on either the person you're in combat with or another person. And then you use your 10 feet of movement to move 10 feet back, not taking attacks of opportunity, and then you move your normal movement away. At 6th level, you get Heart of the Storm. You gain resistance to lightning and thunder damage. Lightning's pretty relevant, and thunder occasionally comes up. In addition, whenever you start casting a spell of first level or higher that deals lightning or thunder damage, stormy magic erupts from you. The eruption causes creatures of your choice that can see you within 10 feet of you to take lightning or thunder damage each time this ability activates. Choose each time this ability activates, equal to half your sorcerer level. Which, this is pretty cool. It scales okay. I mean, it's just this little bit of extra damage whenever somebody is close to you, right? I think the only problem I have with this is you don't really want to be close to people. But I guess the logic here is that you'd be close, and you cast a spell, and then you get the fly speed to move back 10 feet. And you get this damage on before you move back. So I could see the use behind it, but I don't. It seems to be implying that the Storm Sorcerer is a sorcerer that wants to be kind of mid-range, right? You need to be getting pretty close to the enemy, but not like too close because you don't want to be in melee. And I don't. know if I understand the idea behind that, or really like it as a concept for a sorcerer that's really squishy. Storm Guide. If it's raining, you gain the ability to subtly control the weather around you. If it's raining, you can use an action to cause the rain to stop falling in a 20-foot foot radius sphere centered on you. You can end this effect as a bonus action. I don't see how that would be useful, if I'm being completely honest, other than to show off to other people. Now, don't get me wrong, that's actually really a really appealing ability to have, to just to show off to people. But I'm just saying, in my opinion, I don't see how that ever comes up, like as a practical use, as having a practical use. Although I guess shock factor and I guess yeah, just shock factor and really is the only way I could see it being useful. If it's windy, you can use a bonus action each round to choose the direction that the wind blows in a 100-foot radius sphere around you. The wind blows in that direction until the end of your next turn. The feature doesn't alter the speed of the wind. Now, this has some utility. Because if you're in a situation where you're on a boat and it's really windy and you need to get a certain direction, you can go, boop, I activate this ability. I make the wind go the direction we want to. It's already going really fast, so we go really fast to that location. But I think this only gets used if the wind is really windy. Overall, they're cool utility abilities that may get occasional uses, but I think they're not going to be incredible. The 6th level Heart of the Storm ability is the one that you're probably using a lot of the time. And I quite like that ability. Starting at 14th level, when you are hit by a melee attack, you can use your reaction to deal lightning damage to the attacker. The damage is equal to your sorcery level. The attacker must also make a strength saving throw against your sorcery DC. On a failed save, the attacker is pushed a straight line up to 20 feet away from you. So this also goes into the idea of being mid-range. So from what I'm gathering in the Storm Sorcerer, the idea is you're sort of mid-range, you go in there, you cast your spells close-ish to the enemy, they take a bunch of damage, and then you proceed to move back. And like that's it. Like that's the point. It's just supposed to be close. But to me, like you're putting yourself in so much danger for a little bit of extra damage, and it does add up. I mean, when you're hitting like 20th level, every one of those spells is doing an extra 10 damage. Like that's not insignificant, even at that level. That's just little bits of extra damage. But you're putting yourself in a situation where you're a sorcerer, a boss could half you in a swing of attacks if it rolls well. It could kill you in a swing of attacks if it rolls well, depending on how powerful the boss is. So you're putting yourself under that, and like, sure, with this ability it goes, okay, he hits you once, he takes some reaction, you can use your reaction to deal lightning damage. Cool, they take an extra 6 damage, 7 damage. And then you can push them away and they don't get the rest of their attacks. That's not bad. But you could also have stayed back and he never had the chance to hit you with this. I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding completely the logic behind staying near them. There is a chance that maybe I'm missing a bunch of touch spells that you have access to as a sorcerer that facilitate being so close to the battle. Wind Soul. At 18th level, you gain immunity to lightning and thunder damage. That's pretty decent. You also gain a magical flying speed of 60 feet. Another fucking flying speed. As an action, you can reduce your flying speed to 30 for 1 hour and choose a number of creatures within 30 feet of you, equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier, which will probably be 7 at that point. Oh. You know, this used to be really, really good, and then I kind of feel like either they just swarmed it with adverts and it's affecting its performance, or something's just changing in the coding or something. Because it never used to play advert music, and it never used to have the bottom bar as well as the top bar and the side bar. And it never used to crash, but it started crashing over these past, I'd say, couple weeks. 3 plus your charisma modifier, as I was saying before, which is it's probably going to be 5 at that point. Your charisma modifier, so it'd be 3 plus 5, so it'd be 8. They get a magical flying speed of 30 feet for 1 hour. Once you reduce your flying speed in this way, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Okay. I'm not a big fan of flying speeds being a later ability. And I'm really not a big fan of flying speeds being a later ability when every sorcerer seems to get a flying speed as a later ability. I think this one is on the better side because it's not just flying speed, it gives you something extra. But it is a bit of an underwhelming ability to get at 18th level. That's all I'll say. Overall, Storm Sorcerer, it's not bad, I just don't understand the logic behind some of the things it's been doing. In the sense that I don't understand why it's gone for the whole idea of being mid-range without, I don't feel like getting anything from the subclass that really, really makes me go, okay, this is why I stay mid-range. I know all of its abilities seem to be around that, but they're not powerful enough abilities that I feel like it makes me go, oh, that's why you play it mid-range. I still think you'd do better just staying behind, staying at the back line. Wild Magic Surge. God, that's a lot. When you choose this origin at first level, your spellcasting can unleash surges of untamed magic. Immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell at first level or higher, the DM can have you roll a d20. You roll a 1 on the Magic Surge table to create a random magical effect. Okay, I don't understand that bit. Can happen once per turn. Okay, so whenever you cast a spell, you can roll a d20. And there's a bunch here. I'm not going to go through them all, but one of them gives you invisibility, one of them gets you a Modron, one of them casts Fireball on yourself, one of them casts Magic Missile. You know, one changes your height. I'm just going to go through there and choose a couple. Maximize the damage on your next spell. You regain some hit points, 2d10. You cast Fly on a random creature. You're invisible. Just surrounded by music. So it's a decent mix of like harmful to you and your surroundings, useless, and utility stuff that is basically useless, or like flavor stuff, right? Tides of Chaos. Starting at first level, you can manipulate the forces of chance and chaos to gain advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws. Once you do, you must finish a long rest before doing it again. So you just get to give yourself advantage on one of these rolls. Effectively, it's giving you inspiration that you can use once per long rest. I don't mind that. That's not bad. This big table is really what you're getting from it. So having that other stuff is just a nice addition. Anytime before you regain the use of this feature, the DM can have you roll on the Wild Magic Surge table immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell of first level or higher. You then regain the use of this feature. So Wild Magic stuff seems to be entirely based on what your DM wants, and if they make you do it, you get this additional feature. Overall, I quite like that then. It's a cool little mechanic you're giving the DM and also having a little fun with you. I like those. Bend Luck. Starting at 6th level, you have the ability to twist fate using your wild magic. When another creature you can see makes an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw, you can use your reaction and spend 2 sorcery points to roll 1d4 and apply that number rolled as a bonus or penalty, your choice, to the creature's roll. You can do so after the creature rolls, but before any effects of that roll occur. I really like this because it's just like, it's not only just like a bless that you can put on somebody, it's also like a bane. You have bless and bane, and that's kind of how it's working with the bending look. I very much like that ability. It just gives you something else you can do. At 14th level, you gain a modicum and control over the surges of wild magic. Whenever you roll a wild magic surge on the wild magic surge table, you can roll twice and use either number. Again, really useful. I think the only problem I'm seeing with this is you have to be in a situation where your DM allows you to use it a lot, because if not, you're getting nothing from this. 18th level, Spell Bombardment. Beginning at 18th level, the harmful energies of your spells intensifies. When you roll damage for a spell and roll the highest number possible on any of the die, choose one of these die, roll it again, and add that roll to the damage. You can use this feature only once per turn. This is pretty cool, because so if you roll max on any one of your die, and if you're rolling like 5d6, statistically you're going to roll a 6 on one of them. You can go, okay, I get an extra d6. That's very useful. I quite like this ability. I quite like Bend Luck as well. I think the rolling on this table is really fun, but you very much need a DM that will say, yeah, you can roll a lot, because if you don't, you're losing access to your first level ability, most of your other first level ability, and your 14th level ability from really ever being useful. And these are just really fun, cool things to have, right? Like, they're just stupid things, and most of the time they're hurting you. It's only occasionally that they're actually having any effect on the enemy. So I quite like that. Overall, Wild Magic's just fun. Like, his abilities are fine. They're nothing impressive. Like, statistically, the abilities are probably the worst of the ones we've seen. But it doesn't matter, because you're not playing Wild Magic Sorcerer for cool abilities. You're playing it so that roll on the table can happen, and you can get, I cast Grease on myself, or oh, I cast Fireball centered on myself. Well, I guess I'm dead. It's those kinds of ones. So I quite like that. Overall, in terms of the Sorcerer, I mean, I've said this a lot when it comes to the newer subclasses, but I think they've sort of caught their stride with them, and they've solved a lot of mistakes. They're not perfect. I think Aberrant Mind and Clockwork Soul are probably the closest you're going to get to perfect subclasses in terms of like what you get from them. With Aberrant Mind being really good but focusing more on out of combat utility, and Clockwork Soul being really good but focusing more on combat. Divine Soul is carried only by the fact you get Cleric Spell. Cleric Spells, the earlier abilities are okay, but the later ones I think are a bit lackluster. Draconic is kind of in a similar boat, except its endgame ability is quite cool, and I've never seen something like that before. So I'd love to give that a shot. Lunar's really interesting. And I think overall I like it, going for a completely different way of doing how you do spell slots, in the sense that you... Not spell slots, sorry, spells you get from the subclass. In a sense, you have 3 small spell lists, but you can switch between them using sorcerer points. I think that's a really cool idea. Runechild takes the idea of meta magic and adds an extra element to it, which I really, really like, and overall it just has a load of cool abilities. Shadow actually shocked me, because although it came around the same time as Divine Soul, and does have all of the elements that I don't like that are in older ones, where it doesn't get a spell list, and it doesn't get a lot of its features coming back if you spend sorcerer points, a lot of its abilities are really cool. You have that dog that you can send after everyone. You have the teleportation in dim light that's really cool. It's definitely the best instance of shadow versions of subclasses that I've seen. bear in mind the only one I can think of at the moment is Monk. Um, Storm's interesting in the way it's going for, like, what it's trying to go for, but I don't really understand it, if I'm being completely honest. It seems to want you to be kind of mid-range, ducking in and out of the fight, but I just feel like that puts you in danger more often than not. And then Wild Magic is just fun for the sake of fun. If you're taking Wild Magic and you're expecting to, like, do a really serious character, or like you want to be playing it seriously, then you've chosen the wrong one. It's just fun for the sake of fun, right? And the abilities are okay. Like, the two ones that aren't related to the table are actually quite fun and interesting, but you're playing it for the Wild Magic table. And if you've got people that, if you've got a DM that will allow you to roll on that table loads, then you're going to have a lot of fun. Overall, I think I've been surprised about the sorcerer subclasses, because I used to dismiss a lot of them. But actually, the only ones I think I personally would dismiss as being as playing, because I just don't really like that style of playing, is probably Storm, honestly. And that's it. All the others I think are perfectly fine, and I would definitely give a shot. They have a cool ability that I want to give a try. Anyway, that's me done for this week. We've got 2 left, and then I might try actually playing some games instead, seeing how that works, seeing if I can, like, keep up. Maybe not to this level of conversation, but like some form of conversation when I'm not specifically quote unquote reviewing something, just to see if it will work. I do worry that maybe without something to talk about, I will not know what to do. At this point, it's not set in stone what I might play. I might play some Risk of Rain Remastered, or what is it, Risk of Rain Returns. But I also might play some Diablo 3, depending on whether I like whether one of my friends wants to play through it with me or not. Uh, cool. I've been JD Moss. I hope everyone had a good time listening to this and listening to my ramblings. I'll see you next week.